Cassian and Elara had been on the run for 3 days, through forests swallowed by mist, forgotten roads leading nowhere, and ancient paths only whispers of history remembered. And now they stood before the hidden sanctuary, an abandoned temple carved into the cliffs of the north, hidden from time itself. Professor Graves had told them this was the place where Cassian's power had been sealed away centuries ago. If they had any chance of fighting back against the Order, Cassian needed to unlock what was rightfully his. Elara turned to him, eyes filled with quiet determination. "Are you ready for this?" Cassian hesitated. He had spent his whole life being a prince without a kingdom, a warrior without a war. But now, he had a cause worth fighting for. He looked at Elara, his last remaining family, the woman who had saved him time and time again. "I am," he said. Together, they stepped inside. The temple walls were carved with ancient Montclair symbols, telling the story of his family's forgotten power. At the center of the chamber lay a stone altar, covered in dust and overgrown with ivy. Cassian stepped forward, his fingers grazing the ancient carvings. Then a surge of energy rushed through him. Visions flashed before his eyes, his ancestors, the moment of his betrayal, the curse that bound him. And then, a voice. "You were never meant to be a golden light erupted around him, symbols glowing across his skin. Elara staggered back, shielding her eyes as Cassian's power finally awakened. When the light faded, Cassian stood there, breathless. Something inside him had changed. He was no longer just a man from the past, he was a force history could no longer silence. That night, in the shadows of the sanctuary, Cassian traced the Montclair sigil now burning on his wrist. Elara sat beside him, studying his face. "How do you feel?" Cassian exhaled. "Like I finally know who I am." She reached over, lacing her fingers with his. "Then let's finish this." They knew what had to be done. Lucian Vaughn was planning something, a final ritual that would wipe Cassian and his bloodline from history forever, and they were going to stop him, even if it cost them everything. The fortress of the Order of Eterna stood on a forgotten island, surrounded by endless mist and raging tides. As Cassian and Elara approached under the cover of darkness, they knew this was it. The final battle. Cassian turned to Elara, cupping her face gently. "I am grateful for you." Elara smiled softly. "Then stay alive. That's an order, Prince." With a final nod, they slipped inside. But Lucian was waiting, standing on the altar of the Grand Hall. He smiled as if he had already won. "You're too late," he said smoothly. "By sunrise, you'll be nothing more than a forgotten story." Cassian stepped forward, power burning beneath his skin. "No," he said. "By sunrise, the world will finally remember the truth." Part 5. The Prince versus the Heir. Lucian lunged first. Cassian met him midair, their blades clashing, sending shockwaves through the Citadel. Elara fought alongside him, dodging assassins and countering with precision. The Order had spent centuries preparing for this moment, but Cassian, he had spent centuries waiting to reclaim his place. Lucian sneered, slashing wildly. "You can't win, Montclair." Cassian caught the blade in his bare hand, and for the first time, he saw fear in Lucian's eyes. "You were wrong about me," Cassian said, power crackling around him. Then with one final strike, the sigil on his wrist flared, and Lucian was thrown back against the altar. The Citadel shook. The magic binding the Order began to collapse. Cassian turned to Elara, grabbing her hand. "It's over," he whispered. Together, they ran as the fortress crumbled behind them. By dawn, the Order of Eterna was no more. Cassian and Elara stood on the cliffs, watching the ruins sink into the sea. It was over. History had finally been set, right? Cassian turned to Elara, eyes soft. "So, what now?" Elara smiled, reaching for his hand. "You have a whole new world to live in, It's time to start writing your own story." Cassian looked at her for a long moment. Then, he pulled her close, pressing a soft, reverent kiss to her forehead. "No more ghosts," he murmured. "No more running. Just the future." For the first time, Cassian Montclair was not a prince without a kingdom. He was simply a man free, alive, and in love. And this was only the beginning. The end.